Okay, so we're going to have a go at making a very small batch of beer.
Okay.
We're going to aim for about 10 litres when we're finished, something like that.
I think that's quite nice.
So, well, it's a lot less than is in that fermenting bucket down there. So first of all, we're going to heat some water up to about 76, 77 degrees, and we're going to put the hot water into the mash tun, which is this here, which is just, it really is a cool box. If you look here on the back, it says camping gas.
Yeah.
It really is nothing but a cool box that somebody has very kindly put a tap in for us. So, what we will do is we will put the grain into the cool box. We've got two types of grain. This is Golden Promise pale malt, which is what Tim Taylor's use apparently, and we've got a little bit of crystal malt, which I keep thinking is crystal meth, and then remembering that it's not. And that is going to add a bit of sweetness to the beer, but if I remember correctly, the sugars that you get out of here are not fermentable, so the sugars give that little bit of sweetness, and it won't be turned into alcohol by the yeast, whereas most of the sugars that come out of here are fermentable. And the way we release sugars from this is simply by soaking it in hot water. And although we're going to heat this up to about 76, 77 degrees, once it's gone into the cool box, that temperature will drop by 10 degrees or so. Just from experience, you know that that's how much you lose.
Yeah.
And you should be doing mashing up to 69 degrees. Above that, it's not good for it. I think it's down to the early 60s degrees, then it doesn't work. It doesn't really produce the sugars properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure out 6 litres of water that we're going to add to this 1.5 kilograms of Golden Promise and 100 grams or so of crystal malt. We'll give exact ingredients later. So all we're going to do is fill this, put it in this pan here, heat it up. I'll put some water from the kettle in just to speed things up a bit. And then with my thermometer, once I've seen it's at the right temperature, we'll just pour it into here. Okay, so now we've got 6 litres of water in the pot, and we're going to heat it up to about 76, 77 degrees before we put it in the mash tun over there with the grain. Right, so we've got the water just about up to temperature, and we're going to put the grains in the mash tun. And all the mash tun is, in our case, is a cool box. It really is nothing but a cool box with a tap in it. And what we're doing here is we're going to get all the lovely sugars that are locked in this malted barley out into the hot liquor, as it's called. All the sugar is going to be released from the barley, and that's what the yeast is going to feast on and turn into alcohol and carbon dioxide. And we're also going to put a little bit of crystal malt in it. And crystal malt is a lovely sweet kind of malt that won't get fermented, so it will give us a little bit more sweetness in the beer. We're just going to measure 100 grams to go in. Now, at this point in the proceedings, it's important that everything is clean, but it doesn't have to be sterile. We'll come to the sterile part of with the procedure later on. And also this crystal malt gives you a nice colour to it. If you want your beer to be ultra pale, you probably don't want to add this to it. And I may be repeating myself in some of these things here, but we're using Golden Promise malt, and we've got 1.5 kilos, and we've got 100 grams of this crystal malt. So, oh, and you may have seen in the bottom of the mash tun here, if you look just here, you've got something which stops too much of the grain bed escaping through the tap. So it's just a little filter, and all it does, it just fits, it just pushes into the tap fitting there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this hot liquor, which is, as I say, really just hot water, and we're going to pour it into here, and we're going to pour it in slowly, and we're going to make sure none of this sticks together in clumps. It's important that you don't get, you'll see it when we start to do it, it can get to the stage where you get a big clump of this all sticking together, and you don't want that to happen. So, let's get some, and my glamorous assistant Iris is going to do some mixing for us now.
Okay.
Getting the oven gloves because this is hot water and it's not insulated. So, there we go. Stir it around a little bit, yeah. This probably makes more sense once there's a little bit more water in it.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and you won't be able to get this on film, but it smells glorious. Normally we do larger brews than this, and you would put a lot more water in the cool box, in the mash tun I should say. And this would be a lot fuller. Let's just wash that off the side. Yeah, you can see now where it starts to form clumps, and if you can mix that around and stop those clumps happening. Okay, I think this is empty enough that we can just pour the rest of it slowly in without risking scalding anybody. If you want to just keep clear for a sec. Yeah, now if you'd like to stir that gently, that would be great. Lovely smell. Now, a lot of people will do the mashing at a lower temperature than me. I rather like the slightly higher temperature to give a slightly sweeter beer. Yeah, that's looking good. So let's just double check what the temperature actually is. Make sure it's not too high, and as well as not too low. Okay, so we're at 66. It's holding steady at 66 degrees. I don't know whether you can see that, but anyway, hopefully you're happy to take my word for it that we've hit 66 degrees. Okay, so all we do now is put the lid on. Let it go in one way. And then we put an alarm on for 90 minutes. And we'll come back in 90 minutes and hopefully the temperature will be still at around about 66 degrees. And we'll have done the first part of the mash. And then we'll come on to the sparging. Okay, so we've heated another 6 litres of water up to 85 degrees C. And we're going to use this for something that's called sparging. And it's actually a little bit over 85, but that's okay. Because we're going to turn the heat off, and by the time we come to use it, it will be back down to 85. So the sparging is, think of it as like washing the grain. So we're going to empty the water out of the mash tun into the kettle, and at the same rate, what we're trying to do here is at the same rate we empty the water out of here, we're going to sprinkle water onto the grain bed, and you'll see what I mean by the grain bed in a minute when we open this up. So out of this into the kettle, which in this case is just a big pan that I bought from Wilko's, which is a store we have over here in England that sells all sorts of quite cheap hats and stuff. So it's just a 12 litre stock pot. So we've had an hour and a half in the mash tun. You can open this up and hopefully you can see quite clearly. And no, the grain bed is a little bit covered actually because there's still a little bit of water from it. We'll measure the temperature, see where it's at. Yeah, I've lost quite a lot of temperature from that, from the 66. We've lost a lot. Normally when you open this, it's it's pretty much at the same temperature it was. I wonder whether it's because the box is not that full. Normally the cool box would be quite full and you'd have a lot more sort of volume in it, but maybe because we're doing such a small brew, it's lost more than it normally would. Before we actually do the sparging, we have to do this. So if you want to come and have a look round here, when we open the tap up for the first time, there's going to be a lot of grain in the wort. This is now called wort, W-O-R-T. We open. Normally you find it's quite a lot of large particles in it, and you have to run this off a few times before the particles stop appearing in it. And so, hopefully you can see that, it's quite bitty in there. See, there's quite a lot of particles. See all the grain that's in there. So we just gently pour this back in. And we have to keep doing this until the liquid starts to become a bit clearer. And this is quite boring. You can still see it's absolutely full of grain. Okay, so we've carried on pouring the liquid back in until most of the grain that was in the wort has started to disappear, or mostly disappeared. And now we're going to use this Heath Robinson setup here. So here this is going to pour 85 degrees C water in there, being careful not to spill it all down me. And this is going into this little sparge arm here, which has got lots of holes drilled on the underside, so that as the water pours down into here, it just sprinkles down onto the grain bed, nice and slowly. And then at the same, approximately the same amount will go out from the tap as we're pouring in the top here. So, ready when you are. Right, slowly, nice and slowly, that's it. It's not quite level, so it's not really pouring out evenly all the way around, but the idea is that if you do this nice and slowly, the hot water will release some more sugars from the grain. Oh, and just something to note here, that we've got a tube going down into the bottom, so that what we don't want is we don't want lots of oxygen getting in the wort. Not yet, anyway. Okay, so we've now got about 12 litres of what looks like quite murky brown liquid in there. We've just had a taste of it and it's really sweet. It's sort of sickly sweet really. So we've obviously done a decent enough job getting the sugar out. We ended up using more like 8 litres or so of sparge water. So rather than 6 to go with the 6 that we put in to make 12, we've used more like 8 plus 6 because the grain will absorb an amount of water. So it seems like the grain's absorbed about 2 litres of water. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the heat on. And this is probably about the biggest pot that you can boil on a flame like this. We've got it on the middle one of my cooker. And if you see people not using electricity, they're using gas, they have these propane cookers, heaters. And I don't know whether that's because propane heats it up, you know, will get more energy into it, or whether they can just produce bigger flames than a cooker like this can, because it takes a lot of energy to get this boiling. And when I normally do it in my kettle, my electric kettle, it takes a long time to get from whatever temperature this is, which is going to be sort of 60 or 70 degrees, I guess. We could measure it and see, but it does take a long time to get from 60 to 70 degrees up to 100 degrees. And then once we've had what's called the hot break, and we'll start filming again later on and we'll show the hot break. Once we've done that, we'll then add the first lot of hops, and we're going to add 3 different lots of hops at different times during the boil. So, do you want to measure and see what the temperature is? Just as a matter of interest. So it's at just over 50 at the moment. So yeah, we've lost, even though we put sparge water in at 85 degrees, we've lost quite a lot of heat from it, haven't we? Yeah. So this is going. This will take quite some time to get up to 100 degrees. So what time is it now? 3:45. So we'll have a look at the time when we get the hot break. And what you see with the hot break is that you start to get a scum. As this gets hotter, you start to get a scum forming on top of the liquid. And then it's a really weird effect. It gets past a certain point, and all the scum just sort of starts to move to one side. And then that's apparently called the hot break, and then you'll start to see it boiling away, just like with a pan of water. Just like when if you've got a pan of water and it's boiling, you see it bubbling away, and you see it. It's almost like it's appearing from the bottom of the pan and sort of coming out in bubbles, isn't it? You'll see exactly the same thing with this. And at that point, as I say, once that happens, we add the first lot of hops and we boil it for an hour. And what we're going to do is we're going to put some hops in at 60 minutes, and then after 30 minutes we're going to put another lot of hops in, and then after another 15 minutes, so 45 minutes altogether into the boil, and 15 minutes before the end we put the third and final lot of hops in, and we're going to put something called Irish moss in, which is this really weird stuff, which is a seaweed, and that's going to help clear the beer. You'll see all the proteins, I think they are, that are in the beer after the boil. This makes them all clump together, and it makes the liquid, makes the beer as it then is much clearer. I'm going to put the hops in this bag. I'm just going to put some in here, and then after half an hour we'll just get the next lot of hops and put those in, and then another 50 minutes later we'll put the last lot of hops in, and the Irish moss goes into the liquid itself. So, we'll see you in half an hour. Would you hold that for me, please, Dennis? Thank you. So we've got some hops here. This is Target hops. It's about 10 grams of it. Thank you. And we're going to put, you can see how this has got this sort of scummy looking thing across it now. very soon you'll see that it's just going to start going like this across the side, and when that happens we're going to put the hops in. Here we go. When I first came across somebody saying this, I thought they were saying hop break, as in once you put the hops in, it's something broke, but it wasn't. It's hot break, and then later on there's a cold break as well. Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to pop the hops in now. I've put them in a bag, and I'm not going to tie them up first because I'm going to just tie them round, gently tie them around the handle because I want to open it up again later. So trying to be careful not to burn myself on the very hot pan. Just leave it like that, and just some people just put the hops in straight in the water, but I like to use these little bags because otherwise the water is full of hops and particles and all sorts of stuff, and it makes it, you know, much more difficult to get it clean, not clean but clear, I should say. So we're just going to leave that for half an hour to boil away, and come back and then add some more hops. So we're half an hour now into the boil, and Yella had this brilliant idea of attaching a peg to the hop bag so it wouldn't fall in, which I'm very impressed with. And we're going to add 10 grams of Nelson Sauvin hops. If somebody would like to tip those into the bag, that would be great. You can see that these are loose leaf hops rather than pellets, which we were using for the target hops. And you can really, again, it's a shame you can't smell things on video, but it's really starting to smell fantastic. Smelling like a brewery. So we're going to leave these for 15 minutes, and then we're going to just come and add a few Amarillo hops for the last 15 minutes. Oh, and we're also going to add the Irish moss to help it clear. So see you in 15 minutes. So we've got 15 minutes left, and we're going to add 2 more things. We're going to add a little bit of this Irish moss. You see how we're starting to get lots of bits in here. I think these are proteins that have been released from the beer. So you can see that there's a lot of crap in the beer now. I'm just putting a little bit of this in. Don't need too much because we've got a relatively small amount of beer. If we put this Irish moss in, what that's going to do is all these bits, they're going to be attracted to this Irish moss, and it's going to, rather than being lots of small lumps, it's going to make a fewer amount of bigger clumps of stuff that you don't want in the beer, which when we then siphon the beer out from there into the fermenting vessel, it will make it a lot easier not to have those bits in the beer. And finally, we're going to put a few Amarillo hops in it. So we've got three different hops in this beer. And some beers I've done have only had one variant of hop in. But this one's got 3 different ones in it. Thank you. just a few grams of hops there, not too many. Now, a couple of things that to note that are of interest is, one, if you remember at the start of the boil, with the liquid came up to the bottom of the rivets, and that was about 12 litres. And look how much has boiled away. Now we've probably, I think the estimate is we'll lose something like I think it's around about 2 litres we lose. And that's just because it's boiling away into the atmosphere. And the other thing is that what we need to do once this is done, once we finish the boil, we want this to cool down as fast as possible. So what we're going to do is we're very carefully going to bring that over there into the sink, and we're going to use this, which is currently sterilising. And this is a work chiller. So I've got this connected to a tap outside, and it's going to come in from a tap outside and it's going to go out into my water butt there, which is what I then use to water the greenhouse with, so I don't just pour loads of water down the drain. Whilst this is cooling down, we're going to sterilise this, which is an auto siphon, which is a very cool little device. So this, once that's cooled down, that will go on top of the work surface, and we'll use this, and we just pump out of there, and it pumps the liquid into here. And as long as this fermenting vessel is physically below it, once you start that going, it will just suck all the liquid down into the fermenting vessel. And at that point, we put the yeast in, and we're done. So the boil's finished. So we're just going to get rid of the hot bag. And what we need to do now is cool the liquid down as fast as possible. So over here, we've got this cooling coil that has been in the sterilising solution. So I need to lift that out and rinse it. And then somebody needs to hold it whilst I bring the boiling liquid over. Stand to the side because I'm going to come through this boiling liquid. Okay, you can place that carefully in. It shouldn't, hopefully it won't go all the way to the bottom. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, now I'm going to switch the tap on outside. So the beer has been cooled right down to about 24 degrees. We won't put any yeast in until it's a bit colder, but it's down to about 24-25 degrees now. We've used this chiller to cool it right down. I'm going to soak that out now because we've finished with that. And with our sterilised auto siphon, we're now going to pull the beer out of here, and it's going to go into the bucket. And note how Yellow is holding it high, because we want to get lots of air in it. He's going to hold it as high as he can so that the liquid still comes out. And if you get it too high, it will stop coming out because it will be at a higher level than the... But you can see now, this is really good because it's falling from a big height, and you can see that it's really starting to aerate nicely. And the reason we do that is because the yeast likes the oxygen in the beer to start eating the sugars and producing the alcohol, which we all love so much. Right, so we're going to pitch the yeast now. Sterilise the... I'll give the scissors a short sterilise, and then just pour the yeast on. And then put this top on, which has been sterilised as well. And finally, out of the sterilising solution we get this, and we're going to rinse it out. And then put some water in it, so you can see that there's water in there, so the carbon dioxide is going to come out of here, bubble up through there and go bloop, and hopefully before you go, in fact definitely before you go, it will be blooping away quite nicely. And I don't think I put Vaseline on it last time, but sometimes you find that you get a much better airlock if you do put Vaseline on it. Just smear a bit around here and hopefully get a better. Just stops the air, escaping out of the side, and more importantly, it stops stuff getting in the top. And that's it. We've got 7.5 litres of beer, so we should have about 14 bottles of beer-ish.